Let's talk measurement. Measurement in marketing. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your attention. We'll make this session worthwhile. So we are not going to talk about product roadmaps. That's my assurance to you. But yeah, coming back to the topic. So we'll talk a little bit about measurement in marketing. And it's just not a tool to tell you what's working and what's not. Right? It goes way beyond that. But the one thing I want to also admit to is that it is foundational, just the core aspect of what we are expected to deliver as B2B marketers. It helps you understand who your buyers are and how they buy. It helps you establish value of marketing as an investment. It helps you unlock growth and steer your business towards long-term profitable growth. But I think the most important thing that measurement can do for you is it helps you connect the dots from your marketing strategy to your company strategy. So it's a huge tool of validation. And I think there's not going to be a single individual in this room who would not agree with what I have just said. But despite that, there are a lot of challenges. So we all know that it's important, it's critical to our existence. It's probably going to become even more important because of AI, influx of new tools. But a lot of B2B marketers and us alike, we continue to face challenges and we continue to struggle with it. And part of that reason is because there's a constant shift in the landscape because of technological innovation, changes in consumer behavior, and because of what's happening on the privacy landscape. So there's a lot of legislative change that's coming our way. So how do we make sense of all of this? How do we help you keep ahead of the curve, match paces with what's happening in that landscape? And how do we help you transform your organization, yourself, and your teams so all of you are seen as masters of measurement? So like they said at the intro, my name is Sachin. I manage the Enterprise Solutions Group, the top tier accounts for LinkedIn in India. And today, my endeavor is to cut away the jargon, to remove all the buzzwords, and to just help you understand what we need to know about how do we set up and solve for great measurement practices. And I understand that none of you are interested in another product roadmap. None of you are interested in understanding how LinkedIn is going to use generative AI. So I figured we might as well get to a topic that probably most of you are interested or excited about. And the flavor of the season is, any guesses? It's cricket, right? We are hosting the World Cup. In fact, there's a match going on today, and we'll talk a little bit about that later. But the last time we hosted the World Cup was back in 2011. So there's a gap of about 12 years. But what was super interesting back in the day was that we won the tournament. So we won the World Cup title on home soil. And I see a lot of young faces in the crowd, so everyone's staring at me like, what is this guy talking about? I mean, I was still around to watch cricket, but how many of you watched the 2011 World Cup? Okay, fine. Now I'm feeling a little better about this whole narrative. So the 2011 World Cup, and there was a final which stoked emotions in India because it was a ton by Sachin, and then we defeated Sri Lanka. But I think it was even more important, and what we are going to refer to a little bit today is I strongly believe we learn more from failures in cricket, in life, and in marketing than from our successes. And so there was this one match in that tournament that India actually lost. And it was the match against South Africa. And we started on a very good note in that match. So we actually started on a very solid score of 296 again. And Sachin made 100, my namesake, but honestly, that's where the similarities end, is that we landed into that match in a very strong position. And it was well known that we had not only a good batting lineup, we had a great bowling lineup. And one of the anchors of that bowling lineup was actually Zahir. So you must have all heard about this. You must have read the stories. You must have understood. This was almost a cult-level narrative at the time. And what was so special was his left arm, reverse swing, the first time any cricketer was trying to do that, and it would take batsmen by surprise. So he was actually taking wickets for fun through the tournament. There was nothing that could have displaced India in that match. Interesting bit is South Africa had access to a lot of data, like all of us, right? And they had done their homework. So they had studied some statistics. And deadly as Zahir was, he was super effective in the death overs. So this is overs 40 and beyond. He was less effective towards the initial part of the match. And the reason for that's very, very simple. Is when you try and grasp the ball like he does, and when you try and throw it with momentum, it helps you if the ball's worn out. So if you have a fresh new ball, it is not as effective. So if you're interested in statistics, by the way, his averages were about 4.7 runs per wicket towards the end of the match, and it was 4 times more. It was about 17 runs per wicket at that point for the first few overs. South Africa knew this, and they played to this. So they actually forced Team India to launch Zaheer and to have not only his first bowling spell, but his second bowling spell before the 40th over kicked in. So over 40 kicks in, they are playing very defensively and cautiously. Our captain is forced to send Zaheer back on the ground again and again, but then there's only 1 over remaining in the death overs. And you already know the outcome, because I started the story with that, is that we lost that match. The single solitary match we lost in that tournament. And why do I narrate this story? Is because it links very well with how we need to think about marketing and measurement or analytics in marketing. And there are 3 aspects that they figured out. And those 3 aspects are fairly simple. And those 3 aspects are knowing what to measure. What do you want to measure and why? Having access to the right statistics and tools, super important. They knew what to look at. And the last bit was, when you have the insights, what do you really do with that? So how do you weave a story? So think of it from their standpoint, it was a story that they wove, and it was a strategy that they played that we landed deeply into. Right? And that is what we have to do as marketers. So let's talk about these 3 levels quickly, just over the next few minutes. But the first one, like I said, is knowing what to measure and being sure that are we looking at the right data, are we looking at the right tools, is this the right pursuit for us? And I want to actually borrow another cricket analogy, not from World Cup, but this is again something that I'm sure many of you in attendance here would be an experts on, and probably much better than I am, but it's something that we've all studied in the press for a long period of time. So, and this is basically about Shikhar Dhawan, right? A great batsman on his own accord, but there was a long time that India moved on with him as an opener, and there were a lot of questions asked. I mean, when I say great batsman, he's had a great average, about 44, 91 as a strike rate, and we continued with him as an opener for way too long. And if you look at it in isolation, yes, we had other options. So someone else could have been an opener for India. But there was something very peculiar. And the thing that was peculiar is when clubbed with a right-handed batsman, he had the ability to bring out the best in that opening partnership. So as an example, if you look at Rohit Sharma, his average goes from 35 to 58 when it's Shikhar Dhawan on the other end. And there is a scientific reason for that, is that A, he's a left-handed batsman, plays with a lot of flamboyance, it's a lot of risk-taking, and that gives time for the other batsmen to settle in. So when you look at a metric in isolation, it might tell you a story, but that might not always be the entirety of what you're solving for. And why I'm sharing this here is, as marketers, and specifically as B2B marketers, we've addressed this enough today, through the day, is there's a huge association, there's just the knee-jerk reaction to look into vanity metrics. What is that one metric in isolation solving for? But suddenly when you see that metric in the perspective of what it's doing for your business, for your funnel, across the entire domain of what you're trying to achieve, putting together your SEO, web analytics, the whole digital suite, it's sometimes a different, more convincing, and the right story that you look at. So fundamental to any measurement question really is to start from a point of view of what you want to measure and why that is critical for your business. Which gets us very well into the next lever, which is having the tools. You have to have the right tools. And the thing is, from cricketing perspective, if I were to look for an analogy here, I'm sure a lot of you know this now, but there was a time, at least when I was growing up, when your friend's friend or your neighbor's friend was the source of truth on what's going to happen in the next match. Right? You would call up people and you would talk to them and they would tell you, this is what I expect to happen. And now what do we all do? Now there's Stats Guru, right? So write the right query and you know what's happening on a Sunday and you know what's happening today between India and Afghanistan with a certain surety, with a certain probability. It's exactly the same in our domain, is if you have access to the right tools and if you are measuring accurately, it solves half your problem. Because not only now you know what data you should be looking at, but you have some credibility to the data that you're studying to solve your business problems. And the last bit I want to talk to you is giving metrics the meaning. Right? And at this point, the only story I can tell you from cricket is, And I'm sure you've seen this. Is this the gambit of just how bowlers set up the field, get the batsman convinced that they're going to throw a short ball, and then throw a long ball. And so many wickets are scored in absolutely every tournament. So it's not just what you measure, but also how you weave a story around that and the kind of story that you want to narrate. So those are the three big pillars. And I want you all to understand that without getting into the actual jargon, the tech stack that you're looking at, some of the more advanced APIs and product features, if these three parts of the conversation are what you're solving for, then that's a very high probability that you will end with a great solution as far as your measurement problems, specifically in B2B marketing goes. So when you are, as a CMO or as a leader in that space, when someone in your team approaches you, you have the right approach and sometimes the answers to some of the difficult questions that help you validate that for you. And of course, at LinkedIn, we are happy to partner with you and to support that journey. So come to us if you have any questions. But having said that, let me get on. Today we have actually the luxury, and it's awesome that we are today joined by three practitioners who come directly from this field and have experienced all of this firsthand. So at this moment, I'd like to take a pause and invite our panelists to the stage. And we have today the honor of having Shakun Bansal. He's here from HighRadius. Ashwin, who represents Mo Engage, and Robin, who's from G2. So may I please invite you on to the stage for a panel discussion. First off, thank you for joining us. And thank you for sharing your insights there. At LinkedIn, we like to kick off the panels with something not as serious. So I'm sorry to put you all on the spot, but we would love to understand. I mean, you have great LinkedIn profiles, the three of you, cumulative. I looked at this, about 10,000 followers. But what's not on your LinkedIn profile? So we can start with you, Shakun.
Well, I like to say that I'm pretty shy kind of a person, right? So, but yeah, so I like to add more. Basically, I have a huge passion for traveling, right? And more than traveling, I have a passion for planning to travel, right? So I have spend 100 hours planning for every vacation that I take. Yeah, so that's quite different, I would say. Yeah.
Nice, Robin.
What's not on the LinkedIn
Yes.
profile? Okay. I once opened and ran a clothing store in Los Angeles.
Wow, that's impressive. Ashwin.
I was actually born in June, but my LinkedIn profile says it's May. Officially, yeah, I mean, my parents didn't want me to waste a year, and they were like, okay, just change it to May. I mean, so yeah. I'm sure a lot of us can relate to it in India.
Yeah, a lot of us as Indians can relate to that. Not a great setting for a measurement discussion, though, but we'll move on from here. So we talked on to the more serious stuff. We talked about three levels without diving too deep, but we talked about knowing the absolute surety of what you want to measure and why, then the access to tools. And the last bit to this is how do you weave a story? How do you use insights? So if I could just go left to right, maybe, what do you think is the element that B2B marketers struggle with the most?
So basically, before I kind of talk about where do marketers exactly struggle with, I like to talk about two core categories of marketing tactics, and measurement challenges are very different for these two tactics. One category of tactic is where you can say the impact is in the short term, and the lagging indicator is very clearly linked to pipeline. So you can club all your demand gen efforts, SEO, SEM, performance marketing, your SDR-led outbound. So there is very clear, way to measure, let's say, the leading indicators and how those leading indicators are connected to pipeline. So I think that's where the what, how, and the making sense of what you're measuring is very, very clear. So there's unanimous decision that there is no confusion there across marketers. And then the second category of marketing tactics is more around, you can say, where the impact is on a lot more long term and the linkage to the pipeline is a lot more loose, right? And then that's where I like to club all the tactics like brand marketing, the impact of your content marketing efforts, your product marketing, you're running a podcast, how is it helping in the, ultimate pipeline? So that's where there is a confusion, in terms of what should be the what of the metrics, right? How should I measure it? Is it making sense? Now, taking example, let's say if I were to measure what was the impact of my brand marketing efforts, right? So one way to say that is, okay, I can look at how my brand searches on Google is increasing, or how my mentions on LinkedIn is increasing. But is it giving us the complete picture? Is the what the right metric, or is it something else, right? Or if we know the what, is it the right way to measure it? So I think that's where this category of tactics is where there is lack of there is huge amount of confusion, and a lot of marketers struggle with. Yep.
I'll pass on to you, Robin. I mean, in your experience working with marketers.
Well, I am a marketer, and
Awesome, yes.
and I lead the revenue marketing team at G2. So I'd say one thing we just cannot seem to get out of our own way and stop focusing only on pipeline, because when pipeline isn't really converting down funnel to close one business, then no one really cares about the marketing team sort of high-fiving itself on all the pipeline we generated. So I'd say that we're definitely evolving from conversations away from pipeline to revenue.
Got it. Thank you. And Ashwin.
I think, I think from my own sort of experience, right? The biggest challenge for me has been, it's the other way around, right? It's more about first understanding the business and then the metrics. I mean, that's common for most B2B organizations, right? It's like, how much money are you going to make from new customers? How much money are you going to make from existing customers? And what are your costs? That people have a clear, or at least a fair idea of where you want to be with those three metrics for next year, let us say. And then you are, okay, this is where you want to be, and this is where you're here, and how do you bridge the gap is your GTM, right? Who do you sell to, what do you sell for, and how do you sell, right? And I think that's where it starts from. I think for us, for me, the challenge I faced is, how do you sort of get that alignment across all the GTM functions, saying, this is what we will do, and this is what we will not do. So that is one part of the challenge. And then the challenge is, at least for me, is more about what are the metrics that I measure which make sense for the GTM, right? So everyone agrees on GTM, and then everyone agrees that, okay, marketing will play this particular role as part of the GTM. And as part of that role, this is what we will measure, right? Otherwise, there's just thousands of things that I can continue measuring in marketing. And, but if I'm sort of operating in that silo, I think there is a very real risk of what we are measuring and what we are doing sort of going sideways, right? And it doesn't get alignment. So from my experience, I think that is the biggest risk. I think access is more of a symptom. If I have these two sorted, I will find the tools which will give me that access, because I know what I'm looking for. And I'll figure out a way to solve that problem. But from my experience, I think that is, so you left it at 1, 2, and 3. I would say it starts from 3, then 1, and 2, I think is more of a symptom.
Excellent point, and something that we don't address enough, or it didn't at least address today, is the internal alignment, and for the partners to come together and to agree on what your roadmap should look like. I think that's clearly, as leaders, one of the challenges. I would take a bet that there's actually a lot of marketers in this room today who just don't focus on marketing within India, but are also trying to build markets. So we like to call this export marketing, but these are global markets that you're all trying to penetrate, which Ashwin, you and Shakun, you are also actively trying to do. And that gets me to the next point is, we'd love to hear from you on how you think about measurement, either differently or if it is very similar when you look at domestic versus export marketing. And maybe we can start with you, Ashwin, and capture your thoughts first.
I think I'll build on to my previous answer, right? I think, again, it's a question of saying, okay, there are certain markets where I have a certain level of maturity and I have a certain position in it, and there are certain markets where I don't, right? So depending on that, some of the ways in which we do marketing differs. So for example, practical example, right? Like in India, we have been marketing in India for the last, I guess, 4 years or so. And to a large extent, a lot of markets in Southeast Asia. And I think we are in a position where our brand is fairly well known, at least in certain segments that we are selling into, right? Now, for the last 4 years, one of the key metrics for us, especially in Asia, was, are people searching for MoEngage as a brand, right? Because 4 years ago, not a lot of people knew about MoEngage. So are more people searching for MoEngage? Are they coming to my website? What is the traffic, brand traffic on my website? How much of it is converting into demo requests? All of that was key. Now, in India, I'm in a position where if I ask or if I say that, okay, I need to continue improving my brand and, and start looking at that metric, it's not going to work, right? I mean, I'll probably see some result, but the maturity and my position within the market is very different as opposed to say, let's say US, right? Where still a lot of people don't know me, right? So there, I think, the way we look at some of these metrics and the way we look at some of these marketing campaigns itself is very different. So I think a lot of it depends on that and depends on what your numbers you want to be for that region and where you are and the gap and the GTM strategy for that particular region. And then your own market maturity or your own position with where you are. And then, we sort of work backwards and say, okay, this is what I want to measure. In the US, yes, I'll still measure brand, I'll still measure, traffic, I still measure all of that because there is a huge room for my improvement. In India, I know that most of my business will probably come from a list of 250 named accounts. Everyone knows it in the team. So now if I keep investing in brand and say, okay, my brand keyword search volume was not increasing, of course it will not improve, right? Because there's only 250 people that who don't know about MoEngage yet, or at least that's my target market. So that's how we look at it.
So very similar approach is what you're saying.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, looking at the market and where we are as a maturity.
Robin, it's the reverse for you, isn't it? I mean, India is export market for you. So tell us a little bit about your approach.
Yeah, G2 is headquartered in Chicago, but we're global. So we have offices in EMEA and APAC. We have a great marketing team here in Bangalore. Shout out Shreyanshi, Sakshi, Manish, where are you? But how we look at it is we allocate resources a little bit differently. I mean, our targets are higher in US, SMB, mid-market, commercial, and enterprise. But we know that EMEA and APAC, there's probably more awareness that we have to do. So we invest more in events like G2 Live this coming Friday and really just kind of getting the message in market more. I think a lot of people here probably do have a product on G2 already, but then it's increasing awareness of what marketers can do to enhance brand and awareness with G2, more for demand with intent data. So there's, really work and intention behind just increasing awareness, and then we allocate and we plan budget and resources differently.
Sure, makes sense. Shakun, if I could request you.
What I think is measurement generally does not differ for any particular marketing tactic. It's just that for different geographies, depending upon their maturity level, based on what Ashwin said, right? Based on what your GTM is, how you want to proceed with that market, and what marketing channel you want to go through. Based upon that, your measurement changes, right? So let's say if you are going for a particular market where you would want to go with an enterprise play, right? So you'd like to go with more outbound focused, SDR focused. So your measurement be more focused around those metrics, right? Whereas it's more, let's say, mid-market kind of a play, you like to do more SEO, right? More content building, right? So your measurement would be around that. But yeah, one thing which I would like to say is that the context with which you evaluate those metrics is going to be very different, right? So let's say if I am an established brand, let's say in India, 50% impression share in paid search may not look great. It's actually bad, right? So, but when I'm talking about the same thing in the US, where I'm trying to build, that 50% impression share means a lot, right? So the context with which we evaluate those metrics kind of change a lot. But the metrics that are evaluated for that particular marketing channel remain the same.
Sure. Yeah, so let me just capture just a snippet of that. So you're saying there is some form of market segmentation, there's contextualization, and Robin, to your point, resource allocation that solves for the different stages that the markets are at. So I think that's excellent, and I think that'll be helpful. The other thing that I want to talk to you about is morning sessions. We talk quite a bit about new product launches, about generative AI, about how AI is going to play a much larger role even in our LinkedIn scheme of things and our ad products. And with all of that in the context, from a measurement perspective within the marketing domain, what are some of the key trends, whether linked to AI or not, and what do you think is changing and evolving that we should all try and keep abreast of? So maybe Robin, you can take that first, and then I would pass it on to Shakun.
Yeah, it definitely is changing the landscape and quickly. One thing I'm really proud of at G2 is that we are really rapidly adopting AI across our marketplace. So G2 is a marketplace where buyers come to research software and solutions, over 80 million a year worldwide. It's insane. And then we also have sellers who are marketers like me and like you guys that have products listed on G2 and we're selling to them. But we're rolling out our mascot, Monty, who's a mongoose. Maybe he's a they, not a he. But anyway, Monty is a mongoose that you'll see on the front of our website, but is kind of this AI-powered bot that's there to help buyers when they're coming to research solutions and also now helping sellers. So we have beta going on right now where some of our customers, like Postal is one that I'm thinking of right now, they actually have Monty as a bot on their G2 product page. And so Monty can answer questions about Postal when a prospect is coming to look at Postal or compare Postal to ReachDesk or Sendoso. So Monty is all over G2 from the buyer side and the seller side. And the way we're looking at measuring Monty is by number of chats, number of how far these engagements get on the seller side. Some of our beta customers are already seeing closed deals that have been sourced by Monty on their page. So it's really, really happening quickly and it's really fascinating. And then we also have tests on my team where we're in process of a pilot of conversational email where we have AI-powered email responding at the moment somebody's showing real, momentum with G2. Can we have an email that comes out that speaks to them in the moment, gets them more engaged? And so we're measuring that too in terms of how many conversations, how many qualified, how many meetings set, and then ultimately pipeline and down funnel metrics. So it's a wild world and it's going to be really interesting to see where it continues to go.
Yeah, and good luck for Monty. Yeah. Ashwin, may I request you to, what are the trends we all need to be aware of, look out for? What do you try and keep abreast of?
I think from an AI perspective, AI and specifically with measurement, right? I don't know if there is a lot of sort of movement in terms of AI on measurement. I think it's still very early stages. From my perspective, the biggest use of AI is that it saves time for me to measure better, right? So that's the way I would look at it. But I think generally speaking, a couple of trends, right? I think one is there is focus on efficiency. We're all marketers.
Sure.
Times are tough. Yes, absolutely. So I think there is a lot of focus on metrics which says, okay, it's not about how you're growing, fine, you're growing, but how efficiently are you growing, right? So show me those additional metrics. Like, can we? It's not about showing, but it's from myself alone, right? We have a budget and we have to make sure that it's. So I think that one trend which I think will become more and more, right? Like how efficiently is marketing performing? Is there something that I think that's one trend which I think will continue, and any measurement and metrics associated with it. I think the second sort of trend is moving towards more, at least from a B2B perspective, is more towards account sort of analytics and intelligence, moving away from a very lead-based sort of a model. I think, because at the end of the day, I think we realize that we sell to accounts and not necessarily to leads. And how does that account sort of, what are the touch points and what is actually contributing to those accounts actually moving in from, being unaware to aware to whatever, engaged and opportunity and booking and all of that stuff, right? Right now, I think that's a very nascent space. There's a lot of broken data pieces here and there, and a lot of it is manual. But I do believe that is something that I think we're going to see happen as well. We do have ABM platforms. ABM platforms has been there for the last 10 years and we use it. But I think ABM platforms were built with the purpose of serving ads, and the analytics was built to show how effective that ads were, right? Because you sold the product, you have to show the value, right? So now I think there is more focus, or at least I foresee that there's going to be focus on separating that analytics piece and saying, okay, here is how your accounts are performing, irrespective of whatever ABM platform you use, or they use G2 or on LinkedIn, etc. How is that sort of account touch points actually helping you?
Sure, thank you. Shakun, would love to hear your thoughts.
I'll majorly echo what Ashwin just said. The focus on efficiency. So we are seeing that at HighRadius, right? So So if you see the kind of opportunities marketeers create, so you can bucket them into two core categories, right? So either it could be education mode opportunity, right, where the prospect is just window shopping, may not be actually ready to buy, right? So that's where most of close lost happen. And then there is a opportunity which is like active buy opportunity, where they are actually looking to buy. There is a clear executive approval. They have a right need right now, right? So basically, that's the active buy opportunity. So what we've seen is at HighRadius, apart from just tracking how many opportunities we are creating for sales, we are also starting to track how many active buy opportunities we are creating. And what we've seen is our active buy opportunity closure rate is 10x of the normal opportunity closure rate. So yeah, so this focus on efficiency and how we are able to generate opportunities that really convert, that is one focus area that has come in for sure. Second thing is, and that's a trend that I see, in terms of how data is being, captured, and how these tools will be coming very soon. They're already started to come in, where, the data is not just about one part of one segment, which is like the analytics around how the lead was generated, but for the full funnel, how the lead was generated, how it got converted, how was the experience of the prospect to convert it into a real sales, then as a experience as a customer, so all these full funnel analytics will start coming in. And I think AI will play a very important role in tracking these journeys across these digital channels. And the second part of it would be that how you can use these chat kind of interfaces to pull this data. For example, this chatspot.ai, I think that was from HubSpot. So they can just write, say, okay, show me who are the 3 customers, which had the highest renewal rate. So that kind of things are coming back, and I think that is going to be a key trend when it comes to measurement overall.
Appreciate it. Thank you. So again, let me just capture in snippets what I've heard from you is the focus on efficiency, which I think all of us have experienced over the last 2 years or so. We've all seen that in play.
12 months, 2 years, time was different.
And the other big, the theme that I heard from you is on what we like to call strategic ABM, ABM++. And the last bit is the use of AI and analytics to actually validate what we are doing in marketing and to really justify spends as an investment. So on that note, let me just make a quick shift. And we heard today in the first half of this session on the science of brand building and how creativity plays a part in storytelling. And I know that as marketers, and Robin, you even as the head of the marketing function, you all deal with this on a daily basis, is how to build a solid brand, but then how to connect the dots with the revenue outcomes. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. Maybe you can start with you, Shakun.
Yeah. So see, justifying brand marketing efforts is like the #1 challenge for any marketer, right? So it's like you all will agree. You have to go to your CEO. They'll say, okay, what's the ultimate benefit of this, right? Why are we doing this brand awareness campaign on LinkedIn, right? So how is it helping me, right? So basically, the solution to this is that we have to find, one metric. I think you mentioned in your speech that what is that one metric which gives us the holistic picture? And I'll give you 2 examples of how we use those metrics across 2 very different use cases, right? So one is about the investment on brand awareness in LinkedIn, right? Now, you will keep on investing in LinkedIn, and it would be like very difficult to justify how exactly that investment is translating into pipeline. So here at HighRadius, what we did was that we started to see how many accounts were getting warmed up, using these brand awareness campaigns on LinkedIn. And then these accounts, the warmed up accounts, we gave it to our SDR teams. And we said, okay, proactively, why don't you outbound on these accounts? And then we compared that with the normal set of accounts or the cold set of accounts that they were, prospecting on. And what we saw was there was a 4x, better conversion rate. So here, there is a tangible metric that you could connect to. Yeah, so you could generate a better pipeline, out of accounts that were getting warmed up from LinkedIn. So that's one example. Second is that we were doing all these experiential, things, right? We were doing events. Our CEO was going on multiple trade shows, doing, panel discussions, right? We were hosting our own events. So how do we measure impact of all this, right? So basically, we looked at one metric that, okay, by doing all this, what's the one thing that we're gaining, right? One thing that we were gaining was that our CEO was building tangible relationships with, high-level contacts within the clients, right? So what we called ZZ Top contacts. And what we saw was that for the clients in which we have a ZZ Top connection, meaning a high-level connection, we tend to close the deal faster, right? And the cycle time was shorter, the closure rate was higher, and then our renewal rate was better, right? So that's how we started to justify, you can say, these kind of initiatives from linkage to the actual revenue, right? Yeah.
Thank you. Robin, can I pass it on to you?
So similarly, we have ABM strategies and tactics that involve kind of warming up an audience with very, efficient ad campaigns on LinkedIn and display and everywhere, where we're really just warming up the audience before we start, inviting them to events and things like that. And we track the metrics down funnel. But then there's things that we're just not good at. Like G2, for example, has a report every year, and it's a big, best software of the year. And we do billboards in Times Square in New York. And we shout out everyone from Microsoft to Greenhouse that has best software awards on G2. Do we really have some, solid way, tangible way of tracking that? Not so much, unless we use very specific, links that we're tracking. But mostly we infer in the month when we're running that campaign in Times Square, we do see an enormous uptick in web traffic, and then, an enormous uptick in demo requests and things like that. So there's things that we do measure tangibly, and there's things that we infer. But you definitely need it. I mean, it's that brand awareness and those bigger campaigns that fuel, that make demand a lot easier, demand generation a lot less, expensive, feel like real work. I mean, you really need that sort of wind beneath your wings.
Sure, thank you. Ashwin.
I think there are, I'll have 3 points quickly for this, right? I think one is, I don't think it makes sense to look at brand in isolation or a particular campaign and then say how it contributed to pipeline or booking. We'll never be able to happen that, right? Branding as a cumulative of everything that we do, whether it's PR or content or these events and all of that, will cumulatively have effect. Now, if someone comes and asks me saying, okay, you did that PR one release in way back in September, how much pipeline did I get? I don't know, right? Your guess is as good as mine, right? So I think that's one, like just thinking through, saying that, setting the expectation that, look, when we talk about brand, it's the cumulative of everything that we do that will show this result. Within that, there are certain things which are more important. Like she said, we do something and we see some leading indicators and all of that. The second problem that I see, that I personally faced, is it's not so much about what to measure, right? I can go back, HubSpot, like LinkedIn data, G2 data, CRM data, all of that will tell me that the best performing channel for me is when people have heard of MoEngage, search on Google, come to my website, request for a demo, convert, right? That's best performing. Now, the problem is that the time that it takes for that to happen, right? I do something now, for all of this to happen, it will take a lot of time, right? Do you have the patience to wait for it? That's second. The third problem that I think is, when you do any broad-based branding effort, right? Let us say you put a billboard and 100,000 people have seen it. I can guarantee you that out of that 100,000 people, there is going to be at least 500 people who are in the market to buy that product. Statistics, right? If you market it big enough, you will always have people who are in the market to buy that product. Maybe 5%, maybe 1%, maybe point, whatever it is. But if they are ready to buy that, are you ready to service them, right? Sure. Does your website work? Is your SDR knowing that, right? Is your SDR enabled to actually handle those requests? Is your website optimized? Is there a lot of friction in that customer journey? Does your sales team know how to do those demos and all of that? And I think that's where a lot of it fails, because as marketers, we're like, okay, I did this awesome brand campaign. The metrics that I can control is, search volumes, brand traffic, conversions on my website. After that, well, that's not in my direct span of control, right? But then I have to go back and show the results, even though it's not. So that, I think, is the third biggest challenge that I personally face, right? So it's not about saying that I don't want to do branding. I'll do branding. 100,000 people will see it. There'll be some people who are ready to buy it at that particular time, but they're ready. Then what, right? Are you ready to actually sell to them and actually do that? I think that's where some of it. I think that's where some of the biggest challenges do come in.
Sure. Thank you. I think very involving conversation, but we've actually run out of time a little bit here. Just your last bit, I want to dial down a little bit. My 2 cents on that is just the bigger picture, right? So it's just not your paid channels, just not email, just not SEO. It's how all of that comes together. So you look at everything in entirety. But all right, with that, we'll end the panel here. Thank you so much.